Hello and welcome to the Richness of Our Lives podcast. I am your host, Mary Scott, and our guest today, well, I think that she's a very exciting woman. I think she's quite incredible. She's amazing and resilient. And I'm fortunate because we are both in Queensland, Australia today, which is not always the case with my guests. Now, this woman is, I'm going to call her Wonder Woman. She is an entrepreneur. She's an educator. She is a musician. Honestly, I feel like this woman could do just about anything. Please welcome to our stage today, Rachel Clancy. Hello.
Hello, what an introduction. I had a Superman board once when I was surfing in my youth, and I sort of felt a bit superwomanish, but I fell off it many a time, so that went in the bin.
I think that's all part, Rachel, isn't it, of creating Superwoman? You have to fall over a few times and you skin your knee and your nose and your chin and we get up again and you're no exception. Let's go back a couple of years. Um, Youngest of six, finished school, right, one-way ticket to Western Australia, especially for people that are overseas. You might want to get your map out for that one. And then what happened, Rachel? Tell us.
Well, I went. As you say, it was in the mid-90s, I think. No, mid-90s, early 90s, and it was going to be a recession in Victoria. So I was in Victoria. So my reasoning to break the news to my mum that I was going on a one-way ticket to WA was, if I'm going to be on the dole in Victoria, I may as well be on the dole in Western Australia. So she actually paid me the money back for the ticket because she probably thought I needed every penny I could get, and blessed me on my way. So I went there. With the intention of seeing the West. I really had a fantasy about the West, Western Australia, the big open land, and my stepfather had travelled the West a lot, so he fed my young mind with lots of tales of dusty tracks and flagons of tallies in the Holden Ute and, all those things, and kangaroos and desert. But when I arrived there, I sort of slipped back into just normality, got a unit, joined a local club, got a job, and it was just, I just existed exactly as I was going to exist in Melbourne. And that went on for maybe 3 years. And my mother was quite unwell. But after about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I decided, oh God, it sort of like gave myself a bit of a slap in the face and went, what are you doing? You came here to travel. So I was in a bit of a toxic relationship, and it was a difficult one to get out of. So I answered a job for a shearer's cook or a station cook 1,000 kilometres away. And I thought, that'll do it. So I went for the job interview in a very la-di-da area in WA called Mosman Park. I think it was Mosman Park. And it has like the ocean on one side and then the river on the other, the Swan River on the other. And you had the really beautiful, I think Hancock had property there, and his wife that loved the shoes.
Oh, yes.
They lived there. And then on the other side, which was the ocean side, it was like really low socioeconomic living. And I lived in a flat. There were two tall 13, 14-story flats that were right next to each other, and they both ended a court, each their own court. They used to call it Battle Street. And I rented this little flat there. It was as cheap as chips, and ended up being a cleaner and so on. But this job position, she was beautiful. It was very old-fashioned, take tea on the veranda, and you need to make biscuits and scones for when the family come. And she had her own quarters when she was there, and we served her there. literally. And then we had the workers' quarters where I ate with the staff, and we had a big mess area and a kitchen and everything. So it was quite a bit of a step back in time. She was probably in her 80s then. But I got the job, and I got on a bus, and it's 1,000 Ks, so on a bus, it took a while, and I got there in the dark, and I was like, okay, where am I? And who's picking me?
And you would have been early 20s, wouldn't you?
Yes, I was probably about 23, 24.
Amazing. Go on. So
yeah, and it was my mother's illness that sort of pushed me to get on with it and make it happen. So that job led to another job, which led to another job, and then I did about 8 months on that particular property. It was pretty amazing, beautiful, 100-year-old homestead, an immaculate lawn out the front, which was once croquet, but then it emerged to tennis, and then it went back to just being grass. They had a pool right on the river, the Gascoyne River, and I was about 15 Ks out of Carnarvon. So that was like a mini paradise. That station was 500,000 acres.
Wow, get your head around that.
I know, and they owned the neighbours station, which was 500,000 acres as well. So they had 1 million acres of land in that region. So I just cooked for 8, 10 people, sometimes up to 20, depending on the family meetings that went on. But great experience. Loved it. Yeah. And then that led to another one. So I did that. And that one was a little bit, she was a little bit hard, Mum, on the mother of the household. And they were on generated power, so you had to do everything within a time frame, and then the power's out. And our hot water was a donkey system, which is you have to light a hot water, I'm going to turn this off, sorry, I thought I already had.
So it's like a wetback system, isn't it?
It is. And it's you light a fire and the steam goes up the pipe and everyone gets hot water. So my job was to make sure there was hot water for when the day ended. I lasted about 8 weeks because this company I'd been waiting for to do at that time was my dream job of being a Jillaroo.
Whoa.
They rang me on the station and offered me a job. And I was like, oh, I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'm 800 kilometres away from you. And he goes, well, you've got 2 or 3 days to get here if you want the job. So just make a decision and turn up. And I'm like, okay. So I was packing myself because she was a really hard-ass lady. And anyway, I told her, I said, look, I've been offered this job. I've done the term that I agreed to do with you, and I had the freedom from this point to make a choice. But she wasn't too happy because it was the day before shearing started. So she had,
oh, no.
So it was terrible. She rang the company and said, because I worked through an employment agency, she rang the company and said, I want my money back from this woman. So I went on to I went on to be a Jillaroo.
And how was that? Tell us about that.
So a typical day, we had a donga type of accommodation. You know what a donga is? Like the transportables, they use them in the mines.
Yeah, lived in one of those for a while.
Yeah. So I had a donga room, and we had a kitchen mess, and a bathroom, dongas, laundry. That was about it. We were positioned across the road from a roadhouse and a pub, which was a bit difficult because the pub was too convenient. And our day generally started at about 4 a.m. We got up, we caught our horses, we gave them some feed, brushed them down, saddled up, sun came up, got your orders of what you needed to do, and we were a fattening depot for Janet Holmes Court. So all the cattle came to us as babies, and we virtually just fed them up and rotated them around paddocks and got them to weight, market weight, and then they went on to be exported, mostly live export. She had her own ships because she had her own everything. But it was a great job.
How many hours? Because because some people listening overseas won't really appreciate.
So sun up to sundown, pretty much. Sun up to sundown. Sometimes in the night we were still working. You sort of didn't finish, you didn't clock off until the job was done. And we knew how to gauge our day. So if we had to muster 500 head to weigh them all, because we'd have to weigh them regularly, we put them through the yards, weigh them and do whatever drenching was needed or whatever was needed. You didn't sort of stop at 4 o'clock and go, oh, well, we'll do these ones tomorrow, you know, because they're cows and they're like their mates are waiting for them to come back.
That's right.
So the day went until it was finished. Sometimes we would not pen them so tightly, and we'd move them into a big pen if we knew we had to bring them all in to get them done. And we just hay fed them and left them in a bigger paddock ready to be pushed in. But it was very much, you were just, as with any farming, you're working with the environment. So you don't leave an animal that's in a pen because you're knocking off. It's just, you just don't do that. We had a duty of care. The animal, we loved every animal. They were amazing. They were great. It was great. Just sat in the saddle for 8 hours pretty much.
And what about gender? How many women like you were doing the same thing?
This particular place, I had a French exchange student with me, which was interesting. She could ride. Her language was difficult. But yeah, it was because we had the hotel and the roadhouse close by. We had a little community of people. So it wasn't like I was out in the middle of the bush with a team of guys. It was more of a little township. But as far as work was concerned, some of the local ladies would help the boss. So sometimes there'd be 3 women in the yards working together, and sometimes there'd be just myself. But I never really struggled with that. I've always been quite a tomboy and can hold my own weight. So that didn't come into my, I was never fearful of it, say. I did have one occasion where one guy was really horrible and he ended up getting sacked. So karma sorted him out. They wouldn't tolerate that, you know. They wouldn't tolerate it, you know.
Isn't that good when you think of how long ago that is and what is currently the challenge, not only here in Australia, about equality for women? We're still lagging behind, and I know we're not the only country, but back then someone was looking out for you and managed, which is really refreshing to hear.
Yes, and the country people are like that. They really are. There's no, you go to I made a point of going to small towns and staying for a period, so I got to feel the township and the people and learn a little bit about them and just experience it, because I didn't see the point. It's like when you go on a holiday somewhere and you go, all right, we've got to do this on this day, right, we're off now. It's like, oh, what happened? Oh, we go through the photos and we have these beautiful memories, but you never really feel it, you know. You never really engage in that. You never have that ability to stay in that community and really engage in it. So it was great. Some places I sort of kicked myself for leaving, you know, because it was like, oh, now 20-something ridiculous, maybe 30-something ridiculous years later, those places are still as beautiful, but obviously growth has changed some of the areas significantly. But
I like what you're saying about feeling the experience, and I'm sure lots of people on this call will be able to relate where, you know, I'm doing this tour, you know, and it's there, and right, the only memories you end up with are usually in the photos. And you're saying is creating memories in your heart.
Yes.
And wow, that opens up so many more doors, doesn't it? Experiences, and you grow and learn, and that's what it sounds like you were doing.
Yes, just the respect for the people on the land. You know, unless you go out there and you see it and be in it, you have no right to comment on it, because they're just incredible people, so resilient. never, like, you get some that, you know, have their panic moments and can be horrible, and I'm sure there's everyone everywhere, you know, but they really pulled together as a family. And we saw that, remember the trucker guy who got all that hay out?
Oh, I remember that. Yes, just to
Floods.
refresh people. So I
So
remember.
when we had the Diamantina Flats flood up in the north of Queensland, and the rivers came down, and it flooded and flooded like no one's ever experienced, like it was the 100-year flood. They lost astronomical amounts of livestock, and obviously the ones that they did have had no food. So this young fellow, I think if he's 30 years old, I'd be surprised. He was like, we can't let them all starve, you know, and he pulled his trucks off the road. He bought hay from all over the country, and he took them food supplies and hay for their stock, and he helped. They even did helicopter drops. They really helped the people get through that first, you know.
Goosebump stuff, isn't it? I
It
remember
is.
it, but it's good to have a bit more detail.
Yeah, so that's that. It wouldn't surprise me if he's still taking stuff out there now. But he was a legend. I can't remember his name, but yeah, that's the type of heart of the people out in the bush, you know.
Yeah, that says it all. And then what happened after a period of time? You moved on to...
Yeah, well, I did that sort of work on sheep station, cattle station. I pulled a few beers in pubs, pumped a bit of gas, so almost a song in that. And then how did I get onto that? I went and, I don't know, I think I saw an ad in a paper. But there was a company in a place called Pinjarra, which was probably 500 k's from where I was, and they were looking for a cook for a camp. And I was like, oh, this is a bit vague. What sort of camp are we talking about, you know? And I said, yeah, this would be all right. Anyway, they were a construction company. So I rang them up, and Pud was the boss. He was a big fella. He used to carry his weights around with him. He was 60 then, and he'd always have the, you know, the big, whatever they're called, dumbbells. He'd be, oh, come on, you fellas, you know. It's a classic. In the morning, you got to work hard, you got to play hard, you got to work hard, sort of a dude, you know. But big heart. He grew up in Fitzroy Crossing on a station, private school educated, blah, blah, blah. But he knew the country. So him and a few of his mates put a building company together called Murray River North, and they serviced the Aboriginal housing and built communities in the deserts and in the remote parts of Western Australia. There's a fellow he's like the king of truckers. His name is Steve Bunting, and he's on that trucker show. And there's a photo of him in the office at the company with this triple trailer truck. I think it was triple, but it was definitely double, flying over the top of a sand dune in the desert, airborne, because he had to get over that hill. Truck, you know, carried a Smith & Wesson with him. He was last frontier man for sure. But anyway, I went down to have an interview, and I walked in, and I was like, okay. And this fella Pud come out. He goes, Rachel. I said, yes, I'm Rachel. He goes, so I read your resume, and I see you've worked on stations, and you know what sort of cooks go on a station. He spoke like that. It was just like this one long sentence. You have to really pay attention. You've got the job. I'm like, okay. Can you start in a few days? I'm like, oh, okay. Have you got a swag? Yeah, I've got a swag. I'm thinking, okay, where are we going? And he goes, we head to Kalgoorlie, which is a few hours sort of southeast of Fremantle, because we were down south of Fremantle at this time. Then we're gonna cross the railway line, and we're gonna go about 500 k's along the fence. And then there's a 44 there, and we turn there, and then you see the gates of the community. And I'm like, okay, right. We should do it in about, look, we'll probably sleep on the railway line in our swags and have a camp, and then we'll get up and we'll be there by first light. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the Western Australia that I wanted to have a crack at, you know, not
Yes.
you know, really amazing. So the community was actually where they did the Maralinga testing back in the 60s, the bomb.
Yes.
So when we went out there, I was aware of it at the time because I'd sort of done a little bit of a where the hell am I going on the map, and so I could tell my family. Like, what are they going to do?
If it all goes to custody.
That's right. So when you got out there, you could see the landscape was really affected still. Very little trees and lots of just very deserted. And the people, there was a lot of birth defects on the community, and the people, they were a very black Aboriginal, really, really black Aboriginal. And as you go around different areas of the country, they're different tone. And I understand there's a white breeding in them, but on the actual communities itself, there's a lot of pure bloods still.
Yes.
And you just see they're different people everywhere. Every Aboriginal community I went to is really different. So anyway, we went up there, and that was a big eye opener. Just
in what way, Rachel?
I am in the middle of nowhere, literally. The water was disgusting. You couldn't get soap to bubble when you had a shower because it was all bore water and stuff. But I settled in and did my job and just focused on doing my job. And then once I got comfortable, I'd start going on walks. So they would tell me where I was allowed to walk because of their land and sacred spots. And so they were like, you can follow that road, but don't go off the road and come back on your footsteps because we're not coming to find you. It was like, okay. So I used to go walking and I'd see camels and all sorts of amazing lizards. And when we were building the roads and making cement, we have to find gravel to mix with the cement. So the fellas dug up a piece of spot where they thought, yeah, well, we can get gravel here. And they unearthed, all these fossils of shellfish and different skeletons of little sea creatures. So they would bring buckets back and we'd all have a look at them. I brought some. I still have some in my little display cabinet there. But yeah, so that was that job, and I was there for 12 weeks, which was so long. I think I lost about 15 kilos because the water was horrible. And
it would have been pretty hot as well.
It was hot. What time of year was it? It would have been after the wet season going into winter. So not too bad, but I'd been in WA for a while, so I was used to the climate. And it's a dry heat, not like here where you sweat.
That's right.
Yeah, very dry heat. And so we got to about 12 weeks and we were getting low on supplies. And the boss of the camp, he's ringing the boss. Where's the truck coming? We need this for the building of the community school. And we need this and this and this. And then the cook's running out and we're 500 k's from Kalgoorlie. So it's not like we can just pop down the shop. And the store, we always bought from the community store to help the community out. But so you can only do that for so long because it's just, you eat nothing. And they had a freezer full of kangaroo tails, which just blew me away when I opened the door. I was like, oh my God, skin on and everything. They just literally cut the tail off and threw it straight in the freezer. So that was like a mountain. And we didn't have any kangaroo tail stew because I made sure we didn't run out of other stuff.
That motivated you,
had things, but not that. It doesn't do much for me. So we all called a meeting and said, bugger it, we're going to Kalgoorlie. So we all jumped in our cars, and I had a friend living there, which was just so lucky because I wasn't going to hang out with these fellas, because Kalgoorlie, if you don't know, Kalgoorlie is like the Wild West. There's a pub on every corner. There's brothels everywhere. It's a mining town, so it never sleeps. It just changes shift. And it's wild. When I was there that time, it was wild. I don't know if it's cleaned up, but everyone I've spoken to that's been there is like, oh, you've been to Kalgoorlie. only for one night, and God, I was glad to get back. But I just left the fellas. I wasn't going to get up to mischief with them because they would have been up to all sorts of stuff, and I was just went and hung out with my girlfriend and then made sure everyone turned up at the right place to leave the next morning. We grabbed what we needed and we went back to the bush, and everyone felt better because they'd all got drunk, they all partied, and they just blew it all out. They'd had 12 weeks with each other, and they just needed to let off some steam, which became a bit of I noticed with the mental health. The fellas are really hard. They found it really difficult to be away from home, whether because the women look after them so well, I don't know, but they really struggled. I really found that they crumbled a lot quicker than I did anyway. Maybe I was the mother that kept them all going and fed and make them something nice to eat, nurtured through
How
the family.
old, what sort of age group were these guys? You're still young.
Yeah, I'm in my 20s still. I would have been 24, probably 24, 25 at that time. The guys we had a few young fellas in their 20s, apprentices, but they ranged from probably 60 down. Yeah, probably average around the 40s, 50s, and they were the bosses of the apprentices, all really respectful guys. They were all pretty good. They'd have a crack at me. And because I lived in, am I allowed to swear? I lived in a town called Dan Darrigan when I got the job, which is where the station was, where I was a Jillaroo. And they used to call me the Dan Darrigan Tucker Fucker. Use that, bleep that out if you have to. So that was my title for that particular job. It wasn't very nice, but I found the humour in it. And but I also had rules, that they never really want to make the cook their enemy, because I'm providing food for you and it has to go through your system. And if you don't want to sit on the toilet for a day or two, you might want to just consider how your manners are at the table,
That's hilarious.
Beautiful.
And
they all got it. They were all pretty good. Yeah.
So how long was that second stint there?
We did another 12 weeks. So we were there for, oh God, it seemed like forever. It was half the year nearly. Yeah, with the travel and taking time. From there, we went back to Fremantle. We hit a wedge-tail eagle on the way back, about 1,000 k's out of our destination. So we shoved pillows in the corner of the window, and I sat there, slept. I drove. I wasn't driving. I was passenger. Had my feet up, holding the pillow so the windscreen wouldn't cave in. As soon as we hit the highway, the bitumen, we'd been on dirt roads and boulders and to get out, and then we get on the bitumen and smack straight away.
No accounting for it, eh?
So anyway, we went back, had a few weeks off, and then we went out to another community. We did that. That one was really tricky. Same sort of area. Oh no, actually, this is when they took me to the Kimberleys. This is when I really, really fell in love with the Kimberley, because that's just a very amazing part of the country,
Was it the same group, Rachel?
Same group. Sometimes a different builder or tiler, but the core was all the same. So they picked me up and I travelled with them, and they were cool. It was cool. I could drive, so they would appreciate me driving, and I like to drive, so I can knock off 500 k's and I don't complain about it. So, and in good trucks, we were all well equipped. This one we had to go right off the track, and we were out inland from Derby, so we're in full on crop country as well, and seriously big king brown snakes, and we were off the Gibb River Road inland somewhere along this bouldered drive, like it was supposed to be a road, looked like a riverbed to me. It was just really tricky to get in. When we found where we were going, there was this building made out of river stones. I don't know how old it was, and they didn't put the stones in where the windows would go, so there were these holes in the walls that represented window, and no roof, had half a roof and then open. So they obviously, and maybe it blew off, I don't know, and that we were like, oh, we'll just stay here. It's like, oh my God. Then we were getting really rough. I only had a barbecue to cook on and a open fire. the local stations, because the boss knew the country, he'd organised the local cow cocky to bring us a quarter of a cow or whatever, and it'd come on the back of a ute on gum leaves, and I'd be given it, and I'd be like, right, what am I going to do with this?
That's quite an image, isn't it?
Yes.
Just not only tea tonight, it's other meals and where do I start?
Yes, yeah. So that we always brought fridges and freezers and ran generators. So I always had storage capacity, because that, you know, that's just absurd. Otherwise, we're, you know, I'm not doing beef jerky every night. So we did that and hopped around the Kimberley a fair bit. That was great. We'd take a day off. We'd find a water hole. We'd go swimming. That was the beauty about the Kimberley. It's just because it's not a desert, you can find those places. So we explored the Gibb River Road and looked at all the gorges, and we took the esky on. We took the short freezer and put it on the back of the ute with their beers in, because their day off was like, right, we're having the barbie would come. We'd find a spot, throw all our food on the barbecue, and that would we just park somewhere, and then drive back to the cab.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
And I guess you'd have to make it safe, like you said, no crocs, so there's no surprises.
Yeah. We always went up a hill. We always walked up a track, because there would be a waterfall right up the top, or a water hole up the top. So we'd follow the creek beds, and some of these fellas had done this way longer than I had, so they knew where things were, and get local knowledge, you know. So yeah, we saw some great places. Then so I did that for, I think we did another, I don't know, 3 or 4 months doing that. Went back. Then I was like, I've had enough. I just want to stop. But they rang me and said, we just got one more job for you. Just before Christmas, we've got to do this community ride on the top of the northwest coast. And I was like, that sounds good, at a place called Columbaroo. And they said, but you don't have to drive this time. We're going to fly you in. We're going to put you on the mail plane, and you're going to get on the mail plane and meet the guys there. Some are already there. You've got accommodation. It's a great kitchen. It's a mission, a Catholic mission. So there's a church there. There's a school there. Everything's store. It's a proper community with lots of people. And so I flew out on the mail plane, stopped off at different places, dropped the mail off, said g'day, patted the dingo pet, and off we went again. And I did, before I left, which is sort of led me into my next chapter of life, I went to the local hotel, Conno, and hello, I'm on the video in, and I went to the hotel. They gave me a room, and then the next day I had to fly out on the mail plane, and I had $10 or something in my pocket, and so I went to the bar. I thought, do I buy a beer or do I buy a bowl of chips? It's because I was pretty broke, even though I'd done all this work. You know, I was in my 20s, and I was having fun, and didn't really earn a lot of money, but I still made. It wasn't about the money; it was about the experience, And so I met a fellow in the bar, and we chatted. I asked him about the weather, because that's what you do in the Kimberley. Is wet season starting? Have you had much rain? I'm flying out tomorrow? Am I going to get stranded? Am I going to be struck by lightning in this little plane that I've never been on before? And he was like, no, all good. Anyway, he left the hotel that night and gave the driver, because there's only a few taxis in Conno at that time. And the driver said, you're my last fare. I've got to pick this Sheila up from the pub at, 4:30 in the morning. She's getting on the mail plane. Everyone knows your business. So he paid my fare, knowing I only had this money in my pocket. And I went out to the community, and it was just magical. It was so beautiful. It was amazing orchard of, really old trees, because they were a Catholic mission. They'd been there since the war. The Americans had a base there, so they were interbred with the Americans and the Aboriginal people and the Australian Army and whatever other army went in there at that time, there was still old fighter planes in the fields where they'd been shot down. It was just incredible, but beautiful. The nuns were Spanish. They still couldn't speak English.
Golly.
And they would cook bread in the fire, on the old-fashioned fire.
Oh,
So every
yeah.
morning you went and got your bread, and it was a beautiful place, a beautiful, beautiful community. And I spent, I think I did nearly 3 months, 8 weeks, 3 months, something like that there. That was a good job. And also because we were close to the ocean, we would get oysters and heaps of barramundi, and
Beautiful.
yeah, we were very spoilt. It was beautiful. Yeah, but that was almost the last job with that company. I sort of vanished for a while.
What happened then, Rachel?
I went back to Fremantle because I had a flat down there. And I went back to suburbia, and I was like, oh, I was enrolled to do TAFE, and I had all these things that I was lining up to do. I was actually going to make hospitality management real for me because I've been doing it for the last 2 years or whatever. But my heart took me back to Kununurra. So I went back to Kununurra, and that's where I met my children's dad, and we had a plantation there, and we farmed there for a while. But before that really took off, I was working in a roadhouse up there, and I get this random phone call. The boss gives me the phone. He goes, oh, there's a lady, Julie, on the phone. She says she's from Murray River North. And I've gone, what? How did they find me?
Isn't that amazing?
And they're like, and then I get the phone and go, hi, Julie. She goes, hang on, Pud wants to talk to you. She gave Pud the phone, which was the man who, Rach, we just need one more job. We've had 8 cooks in 12 weeks, and we just want to finish the job. Could you come and do this job? So I said, well, yeah, I'll come out. It'll be a pay rise. There's got to be a pay rise in that. And so they upped my pay, and within the boss was cool. He just said, yeah, go and do what you've got to do. So I did that, and they put me on a barge. And if you've ever been on a barge, you can walk faster than a barge.
That's very slow boat to
up a crocodile-infested river for about 8 hours to get to the community. So I felt like I was in a Vietnam War, like I was just waiting for something to come out of the bush. It was just like so freaky. And then I was the only lady on the boat. It was a few other builders, and he gave me a bucket because he wasn't, he goes, I wouldn't hang over the edge. You probably want to pee in the bucket if you need to pee.
Oh my God.
You're likely to get your backside bitten off. I went and did that. That was another amazing place, but it was a very violent community, a lot of alcohol. We were all caged in our quarters. We had mesh fencing around us. There was a few communities that I travelled through that were like that. You wouldn't stop in some of the towns because they'd steal your tyres and your petrol and everything they could get their hands on. So without any remorse, they just did it. So I finished the job, and that was the last time I worked for them. So yeah.
And what then? What magic?
I got to see the country as I wanted to see the country. I really wanted to go out and have my own dusty trail stories of, instead of a box flagon of Tallies, we had a deep freezer.
Oh, and we are benefiting from this. The people listening to us today are benefiting from all these stories, which are just fantastic. You just keep outdoing yourself with these stories.
Wow.
So then where did you go?
I stayed in Kununurra and we farmed. We had a plantation. We grew bananas, mangoes, papaya, and some small crops, tomato, zucchini, whatever. We worked like dogs. We were still young, and we really worked hard. And it was great. We were flying. We had a lot of staff, and we worked the seasons well. And then we had a mango season, a pretty big mango season, and it was like the last week. and I was feeling really, really tired. And normally I don't sleep in the day. I'm up with the sparrows and I just this one day I went and had a lie down. I said I need to lie down. So I actually slept and slept and slept. And I thought, oh yeah, it's, end of the season, I'm letting go. And then a short time after, I noticed a lump under my armpit. And I thought, oh, I had horses. So I thought I've lifted something, I've pulled something. I better get it checked out. And went to the doctors in Conno, and it was wet season doctors, which means they're not really a doctor. And she looked at me and her face was like, oh, that doesn't look very good. And I said, no. And then she felt my left breast and felt a lump. And she said, oh. And I just knew what she was owing at. And she said, oh, we'll make another appointment and we'll do a biopsy and we'll get that checked. And I said, do you think it's breast cancer? And she said, it could be, but I'm not going to speculate. But that lump under your arm and the lump in your breast is sort of telling me that it could be something serious, but let's not jump the gun, So I went home and
You would have been still young then.
I was 20, I was 30.
Yes, still young.
At that point, I'd been married a year. I married John with the plantation. We got married, and then within a year, it was a year pretty much, I found that lump. So my family history is pretty extraordinary with cancer. There's 8 with mum and dad. There's 8 of us, and only 2 members of the family haven't had cancer.
Goodness.
So it was almost like waiting. Not, I wasn't waiting, but I did. At some point, I think I might have been 10-year-old or 11-year-old, because cancer was such a conversation in our house. It was almost like a knowing, when's it going to be my turn, and it sort of felt like that. So when that happened, I was shocked, but I wasn't shocked. The year before, my brother had lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then my sister the year before that had breast cancer. So I was the 3rd one in 3 years to have a cancer. So what I wasn't welcomed at all. But I didn't let the doctor touch me. I rang my sister, the one that hasn't had anything wrong with her. And I said, look, I think it's my turn and I don't know what to do here, because the real doctors have all left town for the wet season. So she goes, don't worry, we'll get you on a plane. And the next day I was on a plane into Sydney and walked away from the plantation. I said, look, I've got to go and do this. You're going to have to hold the fort. And within 2 days, I'd had all my tests. I was at Sydney Square, Sydney Square, the breast centre there.
Yes.
It was went and got all the tests done in one day. It was like, right, okay, now I know I have a tumour and it's spread, and just had to wait to meet the people who were going to handle my health at that point. So, yeah. So
what's the outcome of that, Rachel?
So I ended up, it was a stage 3 breast cancer. They gave me a 6 month. If I did nothing, a 6 month, because it was so aggressive. They gave me 6 months to live or do the treatment, and you'd be lucky to get 10 years, which 10 years now I'm understanding is like the magic number, that they give you 5 years and you're cleared, but if you live 10, you're doing pretty well. And so I chose to have a bilateral mastectomy, so I had both breasts removed, and at the same time I had a reconstructive surgery. And then I started treatment. I did 3 months of chemo, and in between, when they did the reconstruction for surgery, they put an expander under your skin, and every week or however often, I can't remember, they stick a needle into this disc and they fill it with saline, so it gradually stretches your skin to accept a prosthetic breast later on.
Understand. Yes.
So I went through that process, and we got that finished before I started radiotherapy. The reconstruction was pretty experimental at that time, because at the same time as mastectomy, because they knew that radiation would damage your skin, but they hadn't I was a bit of a guinea pig in the sense that they didn't know. Every case is different, and as it turned out, I finished radiation. I had about 8 weeks of radiation, and then I went back to Conno for a break, and the heat must have kicked off a staph infection that was dormant, and my breasts swelled up so big, and one of the scars opened, and all this horrible pus came out. So we rang the hospital. They called the flying doctors in. So the flying doctors picked me up from Conno and took me into Broome Hospital and removed the implants. So that was a bit of a setback, but I would have died if I hadn't. I would have ended up with septicemia if I hadn't done that. So
how did you get through this, Rachel?
you just every day you wake up. Isn't that how you do it?
Well, you're talking about it, and I understand there's a big gap between then and now. But what was that like? Have you got any idea?
Look, I felt I was quite delirious before we knew what was going on because of the infection. I thought I was getting a cold. I had a flu, but when things started swelling and then I could see this fluid leaking out, I'm thinking, well, this is not right. But we had this really mad, crazy dog called Otis, and he would eat everything, chew the car, bite the tops off your trees. He was just a shit bag of a dog, but he could kill a really big snake. He just loved killing snakes. So he had a role on the farm. He was the snake dog. And I'd never forget, I was lying on the couch and someone came in, oh, that bloody Otis, he's just chewed up, blah, 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 blah. And I've just gone, go and get the gun and shoot the damn dog. And they looked at me as if to say, what did she just say? I've had enough of Otis. Just go and deal with it. Call whoever. Go, one of the neighbours that had guns. Go and call him and tell him to come and shoot that dog. Anyway, it was not long after that I realised I was quite unwell, and probably I don't know whether I had any fear. I think I was in awe of being picked up by the flying doctors and being in that, having that service. It was amazing. The planes are amazing. And the relief afterward after the surgery, taking that infection out of my body was like, oh God, now I feel normal again,
Yes.
My body really did not want to have those implants. It just didn't want it. It just wanted them gone. And so I recovered from that, went back to Sydney, did another 3 months of chemo, and then it was Christmas Eve, I think, or the day before Christmas Eve. And I'm having my last chemo. And my brother rang John or someone that we communicated. My brother was on the plantation at the time in Conno, and he rang up and he said, you're never going to believe it. And we're like, oh God, what now? We just had a massive hailstorm and every tree is gone.
Oh my gosh, every tree.
Like, no. And they're like, everything is gone. And this is the day we didn't have
Christmas Eve. Oh
yeah, it was the day before Christmas Eve, I think. It was my last chemo. And I was like, yeah, well, we can beat anything now. We'll just go again, So he picked up the pieces and we went back after about a month of in Sydney. We stayed for Christmas and New Year, and I sort of recovered a little bit because I was pretty exhausted by then.
I'm sure you were.
Very depleted, and the chemicals do very interesting things to your brain. So it's a very interesting detox after chemo, like to feel normal at some point. Anyway, we went back, had a little meeting with everyone, said, what do you want to do? I don't care. I've just come through what I've come through. My brother, who was on the farm, he's come through. What else are we going to lose, So we went to the bank and they were like, yeah, we'll throw lots more money at you. So we took all that money and we built up and we replanted, and we picked our first couple of pallets of bananas, and about 2 days later another hailstorm came. And
oh my goodness.
So that was like, oh fuck, now we're fucked.
That was the absolute end.
That was like third strike,
Yeah.
So we devised a plan, and my brother's a lot older than me and his wife, and they had 3 young children. So we said, look, we'll get you off the business. We'll take a few months and get you off the paperwork so you guys can carry on. And then my ex-husband and I, we went bankrupt and walked off, pretty much. Just literally posted a arrangement, whatever it is, bankruptcy form in the mail, and drove off, left Connemara.
Into the sunset.
Into
And where did
4.5
that take
days. It took us in a little Suzuki Sierra to drive across the top end and bounce back into Queensland.
Oh my goodness me. That's
all
just
we had was 2 swags, 2 dogs. I painted a mural before I left because I've always liked to paint. So I painted a mural and made some cash. He built a roof on a shed and made some cash. We put the cash in our pocket and we just left. And that was when we came back to Queensland. So I was probably 2 years out of chemo at that point.
my goodness. Now, I remember reading or you telling me that you were commissioned to do some murals.
Yes. I sort of, after a few years being here, I decided I wanted to have children. So we didn't do IVF. I still function normally after chemo, which was a bit of a miracle. So we conceived 2 boys. They're now 16 and 19. And I was determined to not go back to I couldn't physically do the work I used to do anyway. So I had to eliminate all of that. All my experience was irrelevant because I just physically couldn't do it anymore. I have severe lymphedema from having so many lymph nodes out, and that's a permanent thing. So I decided to do what I love and not what I felt I had to. So
What a change. Just
it
think about
was.
what you said there. That's very powerful.
Yes. Well, I just knew art was always in my life, and photography and music and theatre and all that. I studied all that in high school, but didn't do anything with it because I wanted to go to Western Australia and be a Jillaroo. So, I decided I'm going to do that while my children are babies and build my way up. So I got commissioned to paint a rainwater tank, and it was my first one. So it was a real cheap job. It lasted a few years. It was beautiful. They had waterfalls down it and birds in trees, and they could see across the top. The top was like a lily pond, and it was lovely. But it was a new tank, so the paint didn't stick very well. So after a few years, they painted over it. But then after that, I was commissioned to paint a welcome sign for a daycare centre. So we instead of painting on the brick, I decided I'd use marine ply panels. So I got these 2 huge proper sheet panels, big, 2.1 by whatever, I can't remember, really big. And I joined them together, so like that. And we painted welcome. We had lots of young children of all different nationalities, holding hands and smiling. And it was a big rainbow and a happy sun, and a big fig tree, which is in the back of the daycare centre. So it was beautiful, and that stayed on the wall for about 12 years. They screwed it on. Yeah, it was beautiful. It faded a bit, and it's funny when your intuition kicks in and you drive past and you go, oh, the mural's still there, oh, lovely. Oh, it's a bit faded. I should call them and say, oh, look, I'm happy to come and paint it. And, I didn't pay attention to myself, and only a few weeks after they took it down, and there's nothing there now. So
12 years is pretty good because
yes.
murals weren't a thing like they are now. Is that
No. Well, I primed it properly, and it was waterproof, like marine timber, and I used decent quality paint. But then I actually epoxy resined the outside, so it put a nice hard finish on it. And then if anyone graffitied it, we could also wipe it off or use it as solvent to dissolve it off the epoxy. So that was the technique. That was all good and well. I did a few other paintings. People give me a photo and say, oh, do you reckon you could do something with this? And be like, yeah, I'll do that. And, but it was a slog. You couldn't make a quid out of it. Like, I couldn't pay the rent doing murals. It took me forever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then if you're on a ladder, you're up and down a ladder, and then you could only do that for so many hours a day. So I started singing. There was a few old fellows that loved singing jazz and playing jazz. And so we used to go with the kids in the pram to these old people's jazz get-togethers, and I soaked it all up and sang a little bit of that. Then I thought, no, I have to let my inner child out. So I formed a band and had a duo and formed a band and called Lead Daisies. And then that was an interesting experience, only lasted a short time, but it opened my eyes up to how I really loved singing and playing music. And then we did a couple of functions, and then the band, there was a bit of stuff going on in the band, so I pulled the pin. I had enough. That's it, last gig, no more. And I went to the local pub, and the local pub was where we did the last gig. And the next day after the band finished, I went off. I had a market garden. I went off and picked strawberries and set up. It was just in the backyard of the farm that we were living on. So the kids were young, and I'd make a little bit of money out of the food, and we'd always eat nice stuff. And I was coming back from picking strawberries, and I saw this Maori fella on a horse on a corner, and he's got his mobile phone and he's trying to get reception. And I've looked out the window and I've gone, "Kia ora, bro," and kept driving. And he's looked, and off I went to home and packed my stuff ready for the market. And I thought, I'll go down the pub and get a 6-pack and we'll have a beer at the end of the day. And I walk in the pub, and there's this Maori fella in the pub. And I've looked at him and I've gone, "Oh, you're the fella on the horse." And he goes, "Yeah." And then the publican comes out and he goes, "Oh, Rachel, do you know this fella? Paul Terry." And I've gone, "No, not Paul Terry." Anyway, my poster's still on the wall, and Brains is the publican. He goes to Paul, "Rachel sings." And he looked at me and goes, "Oh, do you?" Like as if to say, "Oh, well, we'll see about that." And anyway, so after some time, about 6 months leading up to that, I kept getting messages from different people, family members, people, just close acquaintances, saying, "Oh, you should go and meet this fella, Paul Terry. He's just moved in the area, he'll help you out with your music, blah, 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 blah." And I just kept going, "Oh, yeah, well, yeah, whatever. Yeah, oh, yeah, one day. Yeah, sure, whatever." And then bang, we bump into each other twice in one day. So he said, "Look, if you want to sing, pop down. I only live down the road. Come down and I'll have a listen and see how that rolls." Anyway, I think he saw I had the burning desire, and he pulled me in and slowly taught me how to fit in on stage and how to sing, and work with his family. And they were a successful group for many years. And I just grew into that. It was only a short time that I was with them. And so when that project was coming to an end, we decided, we lived on a road called Junction Road. He was my neighbour, so that was sort of why my business became Junction Road Music. So we decided, let's form our own duet and steer away from that project, because that project's done. It was nearly at the end when I came on, and that's sort of why I came on. And then we formed another duet, and then we formed a relationship, and we've been in a relationship now for about 10 years. And we worked together as a duo for quite some time. Paul's recently retired from music. He plays bass in our big band, but he doesn't do the duo stuff anymore.
So what's the largest?
We have a 6-piece band.
But what's the largest audience that
the Imbil Bull Bronc and Barrels, definitely, probably a couple of thousand people. What we've performed to at the rodeo in Imbil, little old Imbil. So Imbil has this.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's run by the PNC, believe it or not. It's they do 3 rodeos a year. It's a buckle series, and I'm a local lifeguard at the pool, so I volunteer at the pool as a lifeguard. So we raise money for the pool through a rodeo. So the band that I like, where Paul and I are in, we do that. So we bring the band to do that, raise some money, and the pool stays open, and we get to perform in front of thousands of people.
That's brilliant. Now let's we're going to end very soon.
Okay.
Tell
I
us
could
what
go
you're
forever,
doing.
you know that.
I know we could, and it's quite exciting. And I did warn the listeners, this woman can do anything. She can turn her hand to anything. And my goodness, you have demonstrated that with this conversation. But
Yeah.
tell us, as we end this off, we might have to get you back. What's your intention? What does life look like moving forward for you?
Okay, so I've probably been doing the singing the way I am with Junction Road Music for about 13 years, nearly 12, 13 years. And I'm getting a bit old now. I won't say I'm old. I'm aging gracefully, but I want to work smarter and not harder. And it's a physical occupation, you know. You do a lot of kilometres, you load gear, you pack gear, you set up, you perform, you deal with drunks, you know, management, blah blah blah. It ain't glamorous at all, but it's fun. I love it because I love that connection and energy exchange that music brings to people. But so with that in mind, my choice is now I'm sort of reinventing myself again, and I'm studying a holistic counselling course, which is a creative therapies. So it's music, art, it's writing,
Fabulous.
it's sculpture, it's dance, it's I'm going to bring gardening in because that's so creative, and cooking, and it's just ways to nurture yourself and find alternative tools away from pharmaceuticals to solve, you know, more, and not so much I don't want to know your problems. Like, I mean, I want to know your problems, but they're not what we're here for. We're here to build tools to enable you to move through those dark times that you might have. So there's so much release when you sing. So some people just immediately go, oh, I can't sing. And you go, well, it's not about singing, just make some noise, you know, because it's the noises that you make that make your body feel good. So I'm in the early stages of the study, but I'm really enjoying it. It's really knitted with who I am because of all the things that I've experienced.
Oh, yes, I can see it. The
Yeah,
culmination of so much experience,
yeah,
bring it to others.
yeah.
And you know, the thing that strikes me about that, Rachel, is that there is so much healing in that. And because you're down to earth, common sense driven, you are going to make a massive difference to people's lives. I
Mm,
already know that.
mm,
Let me just ask you one last thing.
yeah.
We already know we could talk all night, but one last thing. What would you say to people that are out there listening that are sitting on their dreams?
Oh, get off your backside and do it for sure. No, look, just I never really I've never been fearful, and fear has been such a ingrained in us, especially these last 5 years. So just my I think the way I did never really engaged in fear is because the worst thing to me that could happen was to die. So everything else leading up to that wasn't really that bad. So that was sort of my choice.
Oh, I love it. I love
It was like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, you could die. Okay, well, then you're not here anymore. But see, now in my more mature years, I don't even fear that. And that was something I really had to come to terms with when I was diagnosed, because it was a very serious stage and aggressive cancer. And I had to just understand that I could die. So, okay, if I die, I die. But I also feel now that it's only the body that goes, in my belief. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the courage to do half of what I've done if I hadn't got it from somewhere else. And
it.
I've come, my family and my family is a pretty staunch way back. You know, the women are pretty tough. So
Well, I
yeah,
think
just have baby steps. Just achieve little goals. Make a little goal. Make something little and win, and always win. And if you don't, you've learned and you change, and you've got to keep changing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
We are going to leave it there.
Okay.
I'm utterly thrilled with our conversation. And you know, we call this the richness of our lives, and goodness me, that was all there.
Yeah.
Or and our conversation today. Thank you so much for giving
You're
us
so welcome.
just absolutely enthralled. Like I said, we could go on.
Yes, and I would love to come back and carry on anytime.
That's lovely, Rachel. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.